The headlines, the issues impacting you and your family. This week in Cincinnati on WCPO 9.
Welcome. We certainly hope you're enjoying your weekend so far. I'm Craig McKee. During this half hour, we're going to take a look back at some of the most impactful stories that WCPO 9 News had covered for you this week. 2 years ago this week, stormwater and sewage poured into Northside homes, and we were there as residents began cleaning up, many in total disbelief. So what caused this flooding, and how has the Metropolitan Sewer District repaired the flawed project that led to it? Reporter Marielle Carbone takes a closer look back at all that's happened since.
It can be a calming sound to some. But in Northside, the sound of rain pulls into focus a horrible memory for Rosa Collins.
I thought I was having a dream because I was living in a lake.
Her yard, her street, her home.
There was water started coming up. It was mud and human waste. I went.
We first introduced you to Collins 2 years ago on June 16th, 2019. Her home was one of about 24 flooded when an MSD stormwater basin failed.
Kept yelling, "Don't move."
The water came so high in her home that her brother, a disabled Vietnam veteran, had to be rescued, floated out of the home on this mattress, causing PTSD in the final year of his life.
After that, he would scream and wake me up. "We got to get out of here. The house is flooding," and it wouldn't even be raining.
It's been 2 years, but the scars still remain.
The baseboards are all gone.
Every time Collins walks through her home, she's reminded of that night because she's still waiting to reach a full settlement with the sewer district to cover the cost to mitigate mold and repair her home.
The financial stress is bad, but the emotional stress is just as bad.
Do you feel confident that this wouldn't happen again?
I do.
Diana Christie, executive director of the Metropolitan Sewer District, says a lot of factors played into the incident. First, 2 heavy rainstorms back to back. Second, the CSO 125 project, or 2 stormwater basins aimed at preventing combined sewer overflows into West Fork Channel, was still under construction. According to MSD, a berm here on the North Basin failed during the storm. Water poured out onto Kirby Avenue, down to Virginia Avenue and Martha Streets, flooding homes on both and the Martha Basin.
We didn't have the berms completely stabilized. We didn't have vegetation, and all of those things help contribute to, how fast the water is flowing into the basin.
The project is now complete. Vegetation is in place, and modifications were made that prevent the basins from filling up too high.
Where we are today is, in a much better place.
But that's no consolation to those affected.
The house is so damaged, it has so much black mold, we're not allowed in the house.
Marty Blanken and her husband had just bought a new home and were preparing to put their Virginia Avenue home on the market when the flooding happened.
Because of the damage to the house, we lost the insurance on our first mortgage, so we almost defaulted on the first mortgage, almost went bankrupt.
These photos show the damage.
We spent many nights crying, like, what are we going to do?
According to Christie, roughly 25 claims were filed following the flood. She says nearly all have been settled, including a personal property settlement for both Collins and Blanken.
We've really worked hard to get those resolved as quickly as possible.
Those 2 were paid out in November 2020, a year and a half after the flooding. But the family's big claims for mold remediation and property restoration still haven't been paid out. For the damage, Collins filed a claim for $147,000 based on this quote. According to emails obtained in a public records request, MSD is offering to pay half of that unless Collins agrees to an inspection by a third party. Her attorney and MSD's attorney haven't been able to agree on the terms of that inspection. Meanwhile, MSD did agree to purchase Blanken's home in March. She's still waiting on that check.
We're extremely angry that we had to go through this. We're taxpayers. This is taxpayer money. We're just asking for our rightful money back.
What's taking so long? Christie says she can't fully discuss the claims because attorneys are involved, but she did say
it is our job to make sure that we are being responsible with these public ratepayer dollars, and therefore, we have to evaluate the claims and evaluate the documentation that's provided to us.
This is 2 years now, 2 years. Think about 2 years ago. What was you doing?
I guess the water started coming up, and that's when they realized we need to get out of here.
Yeah.
In Northside, I'm Marielle Carbone, WCPO 9 News.
Marielle has done a tremendous amount of reporting on MSD and its impact on our community. You can find all of her reporting, by the way, over on WCPO.com. Next, an I-team investigation. More than 500 U.S. companies announced pay cuts for their top executives last spring, a sign of shared sacrifice at the start of the pandemic. But a lot of those bosses got that money back this year and then some. The WCPO 9 I-team analyzed the pay plans of 20 local companies. Reporter Dan Monk learned some companies changed the rules during the pandemic in ways that boosted CEO pay.
Kroger employee Ted Richardson loved it when customers thanked him for coming into work at the start of the pandemic.
Made me feel like I was making a difference in a lot of people's lives.
But he thought it was a slap in the face when Kroger announced a hero pay bonus of $2 an hour.
I mean, I appreciate I have a job, but go to work and taking a chance of getting COVID and dying from COVID, $2, really?
So Richardson wasn't too pleased last month when Kroger revealed CEO Rodney McMullen got a 45% raise for guiding Cincinnati's largest company through the pandemic in 2020.
You pushing pencils, you making executive decisions, yes. Yes, you went to college to get a degree, yes, you should get paid for it, but we should too.
Kroger is one of more than 50 U.S. companies that made COVID-19 adjustments to their executive pay plans last year, boosting the pay of top executives.
Corporate boards seem to be very fixated on how to keep their CEOs happy.
Sarah Anderson has studied executive pay for 26 years. Her latest report for the left-leaning Institute for Policy Studies says companies widened the gap between CEOs and average workers last year.
It was really quite shocking to me to see that in the middle of a national crisis, so much of the corporate board's efforts were going into figuring out how can they incentivize their CEO. I think it should have been a year when we should have all been working together and showing, a spirit of shared sacrifice.
Kroger declined to talk on camera, but sent us a statement saying it spent $2.5 billion since the start of the pandemic on safety measures, pension funds, and employee reward. Kroger also signed a new 5-year contract for 20,000 employees in Cincinnati and Dayton.
This agreement will give us an average hourly rate of $20 an hour.
Union leader Kevin Garvey says pension and health care benefits are worth an additional $14 an hour.
It's pretty strong, and you can still make a full-time career at the Kroger company.
But Garvey thinks the company should have shared more of its $2.6 billion profit with its frontline workers last year.
If these people were comped a premium until the CDC said we're out of the woods, you wouldn't have heard a word out of us. I mean, it would have been great, but that's not the way the world is.
At the end of his shift in the produce department at Kroger's Norwood store, Ted Richardson remembers that week last spring when he thought his world was ending.
Yeah, I definitely felt like I couldn't breathe. Felt like someone just squeezing my chest.
He's not sure how he caught COVID-19, but he is convinced he deserved as big a raise as Kroger's CEO.
We definitely should get paid for it too, because we putting our lives on the line too, to make you money.
Dan Monk, WCPO 9, I-Team.
If you'd like to go deeper on this topic, you can find the pay details for 99 local executives by clicking on Dan's digital story on WCPO.com. Americans observed Flag Day this week, and while Monday was all about the Stars and Stripes, there is a new one in the works that acts as a moving monument. It's the focus of my Homefront report this week. This past Monday was Flag Day, and while that day is set aside for the American flag, there is another flag working its way through the Ohio legislature, and it could become an official flag to honor those who've died during military service. Inside the National Flag Company, the name of a fallen service member is being sewn into place.
What does it mean to be making these?
I mean, this flag definitely takes preference over everything else that we do.
It's the Honor and Remember flag, and the National Flag Company in Cincinnati is its primary manufacturer.
It just hits you on a daily basis of the sacrifice that is going on, and we're glad that we could be just a tiny part to give back.
The red of the flag represents the blood that's been shed. The white of the flag represents the purity of that sacrifice.
Tom Mitchell is the Ohio representative for the Honor and Remember organization, with a focus of getting this flag in the hands of family who've lost loved ones.
The families will actually trace their loved ones' names with their fingers, because this is a moving monument.
Then this is the date.
He died on August 16, 2015, and he was in the Army.
The other mission? get states to adopt it as the flag that represents and honors each state's casualties of war. This flag has been adopted in how many states for an official?
26.
26. Ohio is now working on it.
Ohio, it will be the 27th, yes.
Hopefully.
Yes, we've been after this for 10 years.
95 affirmative votes, no negative votes, having received the required constitutional majority.
The bill to make the Honor and Remember flag a permanent flag of the state of Ohio passed the Ohio House and is now waiting to be called to the floor in the Senate.
Kentucky could have been 25 a few years ago, and it just died out in the Senate.
Retired Marine Corps Gunnery Sergeant Samuel Deeds was at the front of the line in Kentucky, pushing for it in 2019 and 2020, along with the bill's sponsor, Kentucky State Representative Ed Massey.
First 2 years that we pushed this, I went to committee, testified in the committee for it, and it passed unanimously through the committee. Then we go to the House, to the floor, unanimous through the House, and then it gets held up in the Senate for whatever reason.
For Deeds, this is more than a flag.
There's 25 guys that we lost between 2005 and 2006 that I know every single one of them personally. You know, 2 of them from Northern Kentucky. 1 I put in the Marine Corps. So it's very personal to me. I'm not a Gold Star family member, but I have lost 27 brothers to combat. I've lost numerous others since then to suicide.
It's a mission he's pushing for in Ohio from across the river in the Commonwealth, and one he won't stop until the eternal flame on this flag has flown high above the state capitol.
Somebody needs to be a voice for the fallen.
No word yet on a timeline in Ohio when the bill could be called to the Senate floor. Representative Massey is expected to pre-file in Kentucky in January. Indiana has already adopted the flag. I'm going to continue to monitor the progress both in the Commonwealth and Ohio and keep you updated. All right, up next, the local woman whose phone number became the magic many people were looking for when coronavirus vaccines were hard to find. Welcome back, everyone. Getting the coronavirus vaccine is now pretty easy, but it wasn't that way long ago. You know, when the shots were very difficult to find in the beginning. It could take a lot of calls, hours online, and a lot of frustration to finally score an appointment. But there was one local woman who tried to ease the wait time for so many folks. WCPO 9 News reporter Whitney Miller sat down with her as she spelled out her mission.
In my phone, she's saved as Magic Adrian. And here in Claremont County and beyond, there are more than 200 people who have dialed that number looking for the hookup on a vaccine appointment.
My mom referred to the phone number as the magic phone number.
Alex Horan Jacobs, like many people, was anxious to get a COVID-19 vaccine, but couldn't get a hold of an appointment. But he had a secret weapon.
And I just saved her contact as Magic Adrian on my phone. And so when I shared the contact with people, that's what it showed on their phone.
He and anywhere from 200 to 300 people also had that number. But it's not the number for a vaccine clinic.
This is my personal cell phone number. It was posted in churches, posted on, I think, at different offices, on Facebook.
Adrienne Anderson is a practice manager at Mercy Health in Claremont and Anderson. During the release of the first doses of vaccine, she took it upon herself to help schedule any and everyone who needed a shot.
I would call one and I would ask the question, which I probably shouldn't have. Is there anybody else that you need me to schedule?
The answer was more often than not, yes.
As soon as the governor would increase the guidelines so that more people could get it, I would receive more calls and I would just schedule them for the day that they were eligible.
Doctors in her office took notice of the extra work Magic Adrian was doing to help their clinic, staying late, scheduling on her laptop on the weekends from home.
She literally sacrificed her life for several months to save lives, and no question it did.
She's gotten thank you notes and cards and emails from families just happy she was able to connect them with a shot she says they so desperately needed.
My friends would tell me yeah, I called that number and I'm going in 2 days. Wow, that's after a year or so of just sweating it out, okay, that's magical.
People were dying daily. If it can be prevented, why not?
In Claremont County, Whitney Miller, WCPO 9 News.
Mercy Health is still offering vaccination clinics, and since the volume of calls has gone down, we're going to attach the 1-800 number and the website you need to be able to schedule those right now on WCPO.com. In other news this week, the Ohio House voted this week to expel the former two-time Ohio House Speaker, Larry Householder. The vote came nearly 11 months after his arrest on a federal corruption charge in the $60 million House Bill 6 case. Householder says that he's innocent and maintains the charges are politically motivated. His trial date isn't scheduled at this time. In the Ohio Senate this week, lawmakers passed a bill to legalize sports betting in the state. The proposal would allow betting at casinos, sports bars, and pro sports stadiums. The state will receive 10% from the net revenue of these operations, directed toward education and gambling addiction services. That bill also now heads on to the House. A special pilgrimage at a special time in the Archdiocese of Cincinnati. It is the focus of this week's Positively Cincinnati when we come back. In Positively Cincinnati this week, the longest Marian pilgrimage in the United States is right here. In fact, you can see it playing out here. Men, women, young and old all carried a special statue of the Virgin Mary from parish to parish for more than 300 miles. As anchor Kristen Hartman shows us, the journey ends this weekend on the bicentennial of the Archdiocese of Cincinnati, which has had a profound impact on the place we call home.
In the history of religion, people around the globe have done what you're witnessing here.
Holy Mary, Mother of God.
But this pilgrimage isn't to a sacred site. Every step on this one celebrates a sacred connection, the family of parishes that are today because the Archdiocese of Cincinnati was born 200 years ago. It's why for 33 days, pilgrims.
Why are you doing this? I am Catholic, and we ask for the Blessed Mother to intercede.
Have carved a path through their faith home. We joined them on the city's west side as they made their way from St. Ignatius to Our Lady of Lourdes to honor a tradition of moments that live here in the Archdiocese archives, where we went for another walk back in time.
Well, you know, you only turn 200 once.
Father David Endres wrote a bicentennial history. He knows the stories, like how praying the steps at Holy Cross Immaculata came to be.
And that has to do with a vow that Archbishop Purcell made. He was crossing over from Europe to the United States, and he was caught in this bad storm, and he said, Lord, if you allow me to make it through, I'm going to build a church on the highest hill.
When he was building that church, people wore a path into the hillside to see the new house of worship.
They started praying the steps, and now, goodness, decades and decades, well over 100 years, people have been doing that.
The latest edition of the Catholic Telegraph has a picture of step climbers, past and present.
This is something, though, that has survived through today.
And the archive has the very first edition of that magazine from 190 years ago and all the rest. It also holds ceremonial ordination wine casks from names you know well because high schools are named after them, journals from those same church leaders, pictures of saints who visited.
It's beautiful.
And perhaps the oldest relic, a vestment Bishop Fenwick wore when he asked for money.
So he went all throughout Europe asking, Catholic communities, everyone to help.
All to support his new religious territory, which back then spanned from Ohio to Michigan into Wisconsin.
I mean, this involves a lot of basically saddleback, kind of ministry, where they're literally going throughout the state.
Humble roots that gave birth to what you know today.
Count the spires that are in all these different neighborhoods. And in many cases, these churches form kind of the pillar or an anchor point for them. The importance of our parishes and schools and healthcare and charities. It's impossible to be someone, to be a resident of Cincinnati and not have been impacted in some way by the Catholic Church.
Which in the considerable good has had struggles too.
Have there been times that we have failed to live out the gospel fully? Yes.
But faith moved and continues to move them forward into the next 100 years. The pilgrimage, a kind of metaphor.
Church, we have a prayer, as it was in the beginning, is now, and forever shall be. So life, religion, faith, it is a continuum.
That was Kristen Hartman reporting. 440,000 Catholics call the Archdiocese of Cincinnati home. And that is This Week in Cincinnati for this Sunday. Join us for breaking news, weather, and sports tonight at 6 and 11. Good night.